The impact of the slave trade is something that's going to be felt for generations to come. I mean, it's going to vary greatly from year to year how many people are going. To be honest, it's how many people Africans and Europeans could catch to send over to the Western Hemisphere. The 1700s are the high point. It's about 55,000 a year. 1780s is about 88,000 a year. It's crazy. How many people went is a little controversial. It's between 12 and 16 million. It's about 4 million died as a whole, even though the population of West Africa still continues as a whole. So let's talk about two things here. First, what happens in Africa? First, you have cultures in Africa are just going to get decimated. Well, you're losing entire groups of people. That's going to happen. It's mostly males that leave to go to the Western Hemisphere, so it's a lot of females that are left as well. Increase in violence. Rwanda, the Masi, and a couple other groups of people are fighting, and they win primarily due to locations. You also have new, stronger societies building up in Western Africa, like the Ashanti and the OYO, the Yoi. People are getting built up as well, so you have these new, powerful regional kingdoms. In the United States, you have the creation of new cultures getting formed with Creole languages, which are basically syncretic languages, combinations of colonizing languages like European languages, so European languages, native languages, and African languages combining to form these new languages called Creole languages. They're like syncretic languages. I'm okay with either term. Creole language would be the official term, though. Syncretic religions, primarily with Christianity getting formed. Excuse me. And then you also have that new music, especially like African and European music, where you have new rhythms, and you're trying to get flat out a ban on music in some places because some people thought it had become too African. Jazz and soul and hip hop and stuff will come originally out of those mixtures of sounds. Then you also have new foods like gumbo and gumbo's awesomeness. Something I feel kind of weird about here with the impact of slave trade is having economic development listed here. When you have cheap and free labor that you can build new things without much of a problem, you're ordering people to do certain things. And when you do that, well, when they don't fight back, well, they do fight back, which we'll talk about in a second, but you have free labor, and that helps the economy grow because now all the money's going to profits instead of to the development of people. So yes, economic development is true, not moral in this case, but very much happens. All right, plantation society as a whole. Spain is setting them up first in the 15th and 16th century. Huge amounts of fertile land. The Dutch, the the Portuguese are doing it in Brazil. The Dutch, the English, the French not far behind. And number one command, sugar. That's what drives everything. The sugar drives everything here. There are some secondary products up there too, but the sugar, everything is leaving. Everything is leaving to go get transported to make more and more money. More and more money is the key. And so even though slaves outnumber the number of owners, large-scale slavery revolt is not successful. And part of the reason it's not successful is due to the fact that the technology and fear is the whole key to keep this thing together. Harsh working conditions, especially in the Caribbean and Brazil, lead to significant slave deaths. You have very little reproduction in Brazil as well because they're basically importing males, and that's it, because the males were working more and the females were reproducing more, but with how many people were dying in Brazil on the plantations, they needed to keep new people coming there all the time. Now, resistance is it's not uncommon. It's not incredibly common, but it's not uncommon. Resistance would include working slowly, inefficiently, sabotaging. They form maroon communities as a whole. Maroon communities, you would raid plantations for resources. They'd go and live in the hills by the plantation, hide out there, and then they would come and raid the plantations. Revolts never work on a large scale because they don't have access to guns enough. Like I said, Haiti is the only place where large-scale slavery revolt worked. Well, not surprisingly, the slavery will end here. Equiano is going to write an autobiography. He's originally from Benin. He's a slave for about 21 years. He is going to write his autobiography and basically telling his story. And his works is one of the preeminent works of how the word of how brutal slavery was got out there and opened a lot of people's eyes to the brutality of slavery. And then therefore, slavery will end primarily due to him as one of the preeminent works, and also just the economics of it had changed. The economics of it had changed, and it's just the price of slavery is really high. Having kids in the 21st century here is expensive. That's taking care of a human. Well, guess what you had to do? You had to take care of humans, even though you weren't paying them at that time period. And so the care, the slowdowns, the price of sugar drops because the supply is so high. The cost was just huge. So those two things put together is going to lead to the abolishment of slavery. Great Britain, 1807, U.S., 1808, France, 1814, Netherlands, 1817, and France, 1845. There's still secret ships that do this. The last documented slave ship goes to Cuba in 1867. And one of the big factors that's...
Nora Anderson, the building comes from the main office. Nora Anderson, main office.
One of the big factors that's going to lead to slavery ending as a whole is that Britain comes out against them. Britain is your preeminent leader in the world right now. In this time period here in the beginning of the 1800s, and Britain starts patrolling West Africa to not allow slave ships to come across the ocean to the United States. Britain banned slavery in 1833 and its colonies. France banned in 1848. The U.S. it ends with the Civil War in 1865. Cuba 1886, and Brazil is the last in the Western Hemisphere with 1888. But now think of this one, not too far away from where we are currently, or not in terms of time, Saudi Arabia and Angola, 1960s. So one thing I big time want you to take away from this is, yes, the brutality of slavery and just the dehumanizing aspect of slavery as a whole, and what humans will do to other humans when we don't treat them as humans. Just the dehumanizing aspect of this is immense. And that people had become numb to this. And so one thing I want to stress to you is don't become numb to numbers. When I have 12 million slaves who total the Western Hemisphere, 4 million die, 2/3 are male. Well, it's 8 million guys. That's 4 million women. Don't become numb to the numbers. 8 million is the entire state of Minnesota. It's a little less than that, but you're close. You have huge numbers of people and cultures disappearing in Africa, all in the name of economic development and for people's taste buds and appetite for sugar.